Hi, everyone. I do see some familiar faces. I think we met in previous editions, perhaps. So nice to see some of you again. Just a spoiler alert, I'm not going to talk about AI. But I mean, we did use some AI, though, in this project. But I'm not going to go into it. And maybe next year, because we're working on some AI stuff, but they're not ready yet. All right, so my name is Giuliana. I'm the Market Intelligence Lead at Hyundai Motor Europe, part of the product strategy team. Hyundai Motor Europe is the regional headquarters of Hyundai in Europe. And we're a Korean company. So I like to clarify always that, because sometimes people think that we are Chinese or Japanese. We're Korean. And we are proud to be Korean. And yeah, so I started this project actually around 2.5 years ago. It's called Beyond Screens 2.0. And in short, we just turned consumers' insights into a concept car, which I'm going to show at the very end. And how this started, the design team in Korea. So we have a design team in Korea. We also have a design team here in Europe, in our technical center. They work together. We do a lot of projects with them. And they came to us in 2023, and they said, we have to rethink the car. We have to stop thinking so much about screens. Because how many of you have newer cars, and you only have more screens, bigger screens? You have screens even in the passenger side, in the rear seat. And I mean, it's cool, yeah, but we see consumers' feedback, because we also run studies in our team about the current cars, right? So we have a new car, and then we go and ask questions, what do you think about your new car? People are overwhelmed at some point. So we thought, what if we actually rethink the interior of the car, and we go beyond screens? And that's how the project started. And that's why we call it Beyond Screens. But that was a challenge, because I didn't know how to approach these, right? So usually we work with cars that are going to be launched in the market in 6-7 years' time. But it's a car that is actually going to be launched. But this request from design was about a concept car, right? So you don't actually commercialize a concept car. You launch it, you put it there, it's part of a PR event, it's part of a mobility show, but you don't actually sell the car, right? But it was a challenge, so we said, okay, how do we approach the research? We're a research team, we know how to do stuff, but this was a bit challenging for us. So we said, okay, let's use this product innovation framework. I'm not going to get too much into details, but I believe maybe some of you are already familiar with it. And our project focused on the first part, so the Beyond Screens 1.0, which is the project that we ran throughout 2023, and the Beyond Screens 2.0, which is the project that we ran throughout 2024, use this beginning of the framework. So in a nutshell, the design thinking part is about, you have an initial idea, so you have to explore the problem and the opportunity that you have. So we only had an idea. How do we rethink the interior of the cars without screens? It's a little bit crazy, because going back to the 60s, right, where the car didn't have any screen. Then we just think, OK, we have to do some discovery phase. Maybe the idea is a little bit more obvious. Maybe it's a little bit more abstract. And then based on that, once we have the problem well-defined, or the opportunity, then we do an ideation. And only there, we can think about building a prototype. Because you cannot build a prototype if you don't have a minimum idea of what you have to build. So we use this framework. And the initial idea, so keep this in mind, initial idea, car without screens. Discover, define, ideate. This is the Beyond Screens 1.0. And how we did it? We worked together with a research agency, which they did a great work, I'm going to show later on, based in Munich. We also worked with the design team in Korea, the design team in Frankfurt, and also with the product team in Frankfurt. And we first started with the desk research, which is what you see on the upper left corner. So it's what we all do. You have a task, you have to do a research. What's out there? What is already there, so we don't have to repeat it? So we checked data that we had, NCVS, if any of you is familiar with it, like New Car Advisor. Yeah, all right. We also checked previous studies that we did. We even went to check papers. So there are a lot of papers in automotive written by professors. But by the way, some of them, we later on hired them to do interviews. And they study the reaction time that you have, right? So how many time do you spend until you change your AC function, until you look again in the road? Usually 3 seconds for the basic functions. So we did all these things. We also did test drives. which cars that we were interested in. We did experts interviews. We sat in the car with the consumers, and then we just say, OK, drive your car. What do you do first? What do you do next? We analyze all this data, and we do a co-creation workshop, which is what you see here. Actually, we did 2. This is a photo of one of them. And we brought all those consumers that we asked questions, so all those consumers that we recruited into the room, and we co-created with them. And this was the fun part, because it was not about, do you like A, do you like B? It's about, sit down, work with us. What are your needs? What are your concerns? Let's create a concept together. We sketch the different concepts. This part, of course, not with the consumers. And this is what we ended up with. Again, it's a 1.0, so it's an early stage. We ended up with 3 concepts that were focused on different aspects of the car, or USPs, let's say, if you will. So I'm going to focus more on the Beyond Screens 2.0. There's so much behind this, use cases, consumer path, and so on. But in short, the first concept was focused on the HUD. HUD stands for heads-up display. And maybe some of you have a heads-up display or have driven a car with heads-up displays. It's a similar logic, but the HUD goes all along the windshield. So pillar-to-pillar HUD, even all the way to the passenger side. Then the main idea behind this concept was to keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the steering wheel. The second one was safety sense. So here was a very clean dash, so no stimulus, no distraction, except for this button in the middle, if I can point it out, which is a rotary knob that is smart. I'll explain that later on. And finally, we have what we call the Future Joy Ride, which is a concept that was a little bit more focused on entertainment, right? So you can bring your own device, put it on the car, and then based on that, you can just play around with the HUD and also with the car itself. Cool. You know, we have these renders, but what do we do now? It's the end of 2023, and we have to think how we build a prototype. 2024, what do we do? Based on this, so you remember the first Lean UX, so we got to the ideate phase, and now we have to build an early prototype. And how we did that was, all right, let's prioritize all these touch points, and based on that, build a prototype. And that's how the Beyond Screens 2.0 started, which is basically translated all these design principles from the first project into a prototype, always keeping in mind the main principles. Eyes on the road, hands on the steering wheel, so it means that safety is important. Bring your own device, also bringing it from the Beyond Screens 1.0. And here what we mean by the mental models is that, and this was one thing that the consumers pointed out so many times, is please keep a quick access for the functions that I use the most. How annoying it is when you never drove a Tesla. I know that some of you have a Tesla. And then you sit on the Tesla, and then you feel like, oh, I need like all these steps to actually go to the function that I use every day in the car, right? So we just wanted to rethink all that. And then we focused on all these interaction points. So if you remember the 3 concepts that we ended up with, we cannot build the 3 of them. Also, they're a little bit like crazy ideas. So let's focus on the interaction points that came from these 3 concepts. And let's just build one prototype that has all of them. So this is the main interaction points, let's say, that we focus on. Pillar-to-pillar HUD, which I have already explained it. You have on the driver's side, on the center area, and on the passenger area. You have a super steering wheel. I will show you a little bit later, but super is because you can do a lot of things with your steering wheel. So you can operate the HUD with your steering wheel. Some smart buttons I'm going to explain later on, and actually this is the last prototype design. The first one had only the first rotary knob, which I showed before, so only one rotary knob, nothing else, and a companion app. So I'll quickly go through them and explain before I show you the final prototype. So the pillar-to-pillar HUD, again, it's nothing new, because an HUD, it's usually standing on the driver's side, but we extended the HUD all the way to the passenger side. And the beauty, let's say, of this HUD is that you can actually manipulate the HUD through your steering wheel. So it's not only an output, because nowadays the HUD is only an output that tells you maybe your speed, tells you some ADAS information, but it's also an input. So from your steering wheel, you can actually navigate the HUD. Something similar to like a tablet that you can just, or you just are with, like a PlayStation like console where you can just like play around, go left, right, up and down. That was the concept. I know it's a little bit complicated to imagine. I'm going to show you a video. So this is the super steering wheel. So the super steering wheel, we steering wheel that we have nowadays, you have ADAS or maybe media on one side and ADAS on the other side. In this case, you have much more. You also have buttons on the back to operate the whole HUD and operate the car. That's why we're calling it super. And this is the evolved version of the customizable buttons, right? So if you remember the concept, the original concept that we developed in 2023 together with the consumers, they were saying, I'm overwhelmed with all these, just keep physical buttons, and it's fine to have just one rotary knob. The idea that we have originally was to just put one rotary knob in the middle panel, and that was it. We tested that, didn't work. But this is actually the end version that we had of the prototype. And finally, the companion app. Companion app, I have to say, is nothing too innovative in the sense that every other OEM has a companion app. But the different thing about this is that we were taking the companion app one step further. And I'll show you also in the video. Through the companion app, you could also manipulate the pillar-to-pillar HUD. So you, as a passenger, had more influence in the car than what the passenger usually has. Again, I'm going to show you on a video, and it's something hard to imagine. So Beyond Screens 2.0, it was the beginning of 2024. We had to go from ideate to actually building a prototype. We already had an idea of these 4 interaction points that we wanted to put into an early prototype, but we just had to build it, a first version, and bring consumers in. So that's what we did. This is the first prototype that we built. It was actually following the original idea with just one rotary knob in the middle. So it was just the steering wheel, as you can see here. That was the rotary knob in the middle. We kept some physical buttons only for the AC, because from consumer studies and surveys we did, the things that they use the most and they want the most to be physical is the AC. Also for homologation, it's a future car, but homologation would never allow us to take out the AC fully. So what is the idea behind this first single rotary knob is that you just sit down there, you tell the car, which function do you want to use, and you just operate the rotary knob left and right. Also, you can swipe inside the rotary knob and change your functions. So it's kind of like a smart rotary knob. It didn't work. It was really nice in paper. The concept was amazing, but the consumer was like, no, this doesn't work. I don't want to swipe. At the end of this, these 3.4 seconds ended up being like 5.4 seconds going through, each function. So we're like, OK, that's why you first do a concept, and then you build it, but then you have to iterate. So we did several iterations. By the way, this is a very low-budget prototype. So these 2 are actually iPhones that were behind the steering wheel. And also, that's a big TV that we just had up there. So imagine that's an HUD. I know that we're talking beyond screens. That was an HUD. But again, we're not testing the design. We're not testing the hardware. Consumers know that. We are actually testing the interaction principles. Like, do you feel fine with manipulating with your steering wheel the HUD? Do you feel fine with this rotary knob? They understand that, of course. So it was a low-budget prototype. And this was the last prototype that we built. After several iterations, of course, I'm taking a lot of shortcuts to explain everything in just 20 minutes, but this took 2 years. We did testing not only with external users, but we also involved internal users, so people from our office. But we were taking people that had nothing to do with product. So we're taking people from HR, from Run, which is basically users as well of a car. So we did also several rounds of testing, and here you can see the super steering wheel, we kept it. We still use the iPhones on the back, so that didn't change. But it worked very well. I have to say, consumers didn't even notice that. But we improved the interactions. I cannot show here. You're going to see on the next slide, which is the video. But we improved the interactions a lot. We got a lot of feedback from consumers saying, like, I don't like the way that this goes up and down. I think if I touch this, it should actually go left, not right. Like a lot of things that goes down to interaction. So we improved that. And also we decided, OK, the rotary knob doesn't work. The first idea we had in the concept, it's nice in paper, but having one single rotary knob, even if as smart as it can be, it doesn't work. So we just switched to these customizable buttons. You're going to understand the interactions when you see the video. But in short, what are the functions that you use the most in the car? AC, media, radio, you name it. You configure the buttons with the function that you use the most, and that's it. Then you always have quick access to the function that you use the most. And with those functions, you can also have an output in the HUD. So it plays out very well, and it was very welcomed by consumers. So I'm going to show you a short video. I think I still have time yet, of how the final prototype looks like. That's the video. I hope that now you understand a little bit better how the prototype looks like and how it works. And I have to say, though, before I finish, is that, yeah, that was the final prototype, but we still needed a lot of improvement. We got a lot of feedback. Consumers was like, they always want to change things. Now when we all work consumer insights, consumers never 100% happy. They always want to change something, especially something like a car. It's very personal. But I think we achieved a level of interaction that was like good enough for us to say, OK, send it to production. We can make an early prototype out of this. And if any of you is in the automotive industry or have attended the IAA Mobility in Munich a few weeks ago, we actually unveiled the Concept 3. So this is our concept car. We work in the interior. I don't want to take credit for the full car. It's an amazing concept. But we only work on the interior part. That's what I'm going to show. And actually, the interior was coming or inspired by the research that we did together with the design team for 2 years. So you can see the super steering wheel here. Of course, with the big changes on design, we had to change it because at the end, it's a PR car. But the super steering wheel had all these interactions where you can actually work with the HUD. You cannot see the HUD because of the angle of the photo, but if you see at the end of the windshield, there's a pillar-to-pillar HUD. We also included all the smart configurable buttons, which is all these squares or pixels that you see. They move it a little bit up for the sake of design. So if we test that, I don't know if consumers will be so happy. But all in all, is using all the interaction principles that we tested. So we have the super steering wheel, we have the pillar-to-pillar HUD, we also have the smart buttons, and finally we have the bring your own device with this companion app. We call it bring your own lifestyle, and the companion app was this Mr. Pix, which is this smiley face that you see here. You can also see it sometimes like, popping up in different parts of this concept car, but we integrated everything into a final product, and we're very proud of it. What we learned along the way, also personally, because it was the first time for me doing a 2.5 years long project working with a blank canvas, because we had nothing. It was a car. It was a concept car, right? So first of all, research can create innovation. So I think like 80% of the studies that I do, or 70, just roughly, it's all about building something and then going to consumers and saying, do you like it? Car clinics, what do you like? Do you like this new concept car? And sometimes we don't sit down with the consumers and we ask them things of like, how do you think the product should be developed? Because especially in automotive, we think, come on, they don't know so much about the product. I mean, they're not working for the industry. They do know a lot. They can give you a lot of feedback. I mean, of course, you need the product they are steering, but I think that's the main takeaway that I had from this long project. Empathy and experimentation lead to better design. Empathy, I mean, it's important to know what people value, their feelings, and I think that's the beauty of this more qual than quant research, because we were so much involved with these consumers. They were even reaching out to us and say, oh, there's an AI study next year. Can I continue participating? This is so cool. They didn't know we were Hyundai, by the way. But we were just like knowing more about them, like getting closer to them. That's why we got the best out of it. And cross-functional is key. We couldn't have done this alone, thanks to the agency, thanks to the design team in Korea, and also thanks to the product colleagues in Hyundai. Thank you. That's 29 seconds. Thanks.